Pain never wants to destroy you. It just wants to be heard without being rushed. We spend so much of our lives trying to silence pain. We stay busy, stay distracted, stay numb. We label it as weakness, try to make it useful, or push it so far down that we forget it's still there, waiting. But pain is not the enemy, it is the messenger. It shows up to tell you where something broke, where something was lost, where a part of you still needs care. If your pain could speak, it wouldn't be loud, it would be steady, almost quiet, because truth does not scream. It would say, I do not need you to be strong for me, I need you to be honest with me. Pain doesn't want a performance. It doesn't care how well you explain it. It wants presence. It wants space. And most of all, it wants you to stop pretending it's gone just because you've managed to function. This isn't about self-pity. It's about self-connection. You cannot fully grow if you keep cutting off the parts of you that are still bleeding. Pain carries information about your past, your patterns, your unspoken needs, and until you sit with it, you're just building on top of unresolved foundations. So instead of asking, how do I get over this? Ask, what does this pain need from me? That shift might be the first honest conversation you've had with yourself in years. And that's where healing begins. Let's get started. Number 1. I need you to stop numbing me and start listening. Pain isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to get your attention. But in today's world, we've become experts at muting it. We drown it with overworking, scroll through it on social media, joke our way around it, or cover it up with artificial gratitude and spiritual bypassing. We've become so good at numbing, we no longer recognize what healthy discomfort feels like. But here's the thing. What you silence festers. Imagine pain like a child tugging at your sleeve. At first, it's a gentle nudge. Then it gets louder, and if you keep ignoring it, it starts throwing things across the room. That's what happens inside us. That lingering anxiety, that short temper, the burnout, the emptiness you can't explain. That's pain screaming for your attention because you refuse to listen when it whispered. In psychology, this is called somatization, when emotional pain that goes unprocessed starts showing up as physical symptoms. Headaches, fatigue, muscle tension, even illness. The body keeps the score, as Dr. Bessel van der Kolk explains in his groundbreaking work. Pain doesn't want a mask. It wants a conversation. It wants you to ask, what am I not facing and what am I afraid to feel? Because healing doesn't start when you distract yourself. It starts when you tell the truth. You can't heal by pretending it didn't hurt. You heal by saying, yes, it did. And now I'm ready to understand why it still echoes. The real danger isn't in feeling too much. It's in numbing so hard that one day, even joy stops getting through. Pain doesn't make you broken. It means you're alive. And anything alive deserves to be listened to, not silenced. Because when you finally stop running and start listening, you don't just hear your pain. You hear what it's been trying to teach you all along. Number 2. I need you to stop pretending I don't exist. That's what pain would say if it had a voice. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in that quiet, exhausted tone that only truth uses. See, we've been trained to treat pain like an intruder, something to push aside, lock in a back room, or bury under a smile. But what you bury doesn't die. It waits. Avoidance is one of the most common coping mechanisms. You push the memories away, you tell yourself it wasn't that bad, or you try to outgrow it by becoming stronger. But what you're really doing is carrying it in silence, and silent pain is dangerous. Think of your pain like a sealed box in the basement of your mind. You never open it, but it's still there. Over time, it leaks. It seeps into your relationships, your self-worth, your decision-making. You find yourself triggered by small things, shutting down emotionally, or overreacting to situations that don't make sense on the surface. That's the box trying to get your attention. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists but will grow in size." That's because repressed pain gathers strength in the dark. The longer it's ignored, the more power it gains. Eventually it erupts through anxiety, depression, broken connections, or even physical illness. Avoiding pain isn't strength. It's fear in disguise. Healing starts when you stop pretending your pain is gone and finally admit it's still there, still waiting, still asking to be seen. You don't need to fix it all at once. You just need to stop denying it breath. Because pain doesn't destroy you. Denying it does. The moment you say, yes, you exist, is the moment you begin to take back your power, not by avoiding the wound, but by finally looking at it without flinching. Number 3. I need you to stop negotiating with people who caused me. That's what your pain would say if it were honest and tired. So many people keep going back to the same people who broke them, not because they want to relive the pain, but because they want an explanation. They want a why. They want closure. But here's the thing. The people who hurt you are usually not the ones equipped to heal you. Some of them will never take responsibility. Some don't even think they did anything wrong. And every time you go back trying to have that final conversation, trying to fix it, trying to understand them, you're really abandoning yourself again. This is what psychologists call repetition compulsion, a concept introduced by Freud. It's when we unconsciously recreate the same painful dynamics, hoping this time the outcome will be different, hoping this time the person will finally care. But your pain isn't asking for their understanding. It's asking for your protection. Closure is often romanticized, but it's overrated. What your pain actually needs is a line in the sand. It needs you to stop reopening the wound by handing your worth back to the same hands that dropped it. Every time you chase validation from the source of your trauma, you're reinforcing the idea that their opinion matters more than your healing. Here's a better truth. You don't need closure to move on. You need boundaries. You need to decide that you are done waiting for someone else to validate your story. Pain doesn't heal when you finally get an apology. It heals when you stop negotiating with your past and start choosing your peace. Your healing begins the moment you stop asking people who hurt you to explain why, and instead you decide that how they treated you is enough of an answer. Number 4. I need you to stop over-functioning and start grieving. That's what your pain would say if it could speak, not loudly but quietly, like someone who's been trying to get your attention for years. Let's be real. Many people don't heal because they stay busy. Over-functioning becomes their shield. They take care of everyone else. They micromanage their lives. They build success, stay in motion, fill every hour. Why? Because stillness is dangerous. Stillness makes the ache louder. But here's the truth. Activity is not the same as healing. Psychologists often describe over-functioning as a trauma response. It's a survival tactic. You push yourself to be productive, so you don't have to feel the grief that's been buried underneath. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the childhood wound, the version of you that never got to say goodbye to what you lost. But grief is patient. It doesn't disappear just because you're too busy for it. It waits. And the moment life forces you to slow down, it returns, sharper, heavier. Unprocessed pain doesn't dissolve. It builds in the shadows, showing up as chronic stress, emotional numbness, irritability, or a deep, unexplainable sadness. Think of it like this. If a bone breaks and you keep walking on it without stopping to heal, it grows back crooked. The same goes for emotional injuries. You can function, but that doesn't mean you're whole. Grieving is not weakness. It's not wasted time. It's a necessary act of honesty. When you grieve, you tell the truth about what you lost. You stop pretending. You create space for healing to take root. Pain doesn't need you to stay busy. It needs you to pause long enough to finally feel. Only then can you move forward, lighter, clearer, and without the weight you've been carrying just to keep functioning. Number 5. I need you to drop the hero mask. That's what your pain would say, exhausted but honest. You've been wearing the strong face for so long you've forgotten what your real face even looks like. You keep telling the world, I've got it, even when you're barely holding it together. And maybe you've convinced everyone around you, maybe even yourself. But your pain knows better. Psychologists call this toxic resilience, the performance of strength at the expense of your own emotional truth. It's when you think being vulnerable makes you weak, so you armor up. You become the helper, the problem solver, the one who's always fine. But behind that mask, unprocessed pain, loneliness, grief, rage, and it's suffocating you. Here's the thing, the mask might make you admired, but it also makes you untouchable. No one can support you because no one thinks you need it. You've built an identity around not needing help, but your pain is drowning in silence because of it. You heal by telling the truth, not by looking good. Real strength isn't about pretending you're untouched. It's about saying, I'm struggling, and I'm still standing. It's about being brave enough to fall apart when needed, because that's when something real begins. Think of it like this. If a house is on fire, painting the walls doesn't fix anything. That's what the mask does. It makes the outside look okay while everything inside is burning. Your pain is asking for oxygen, not applause. It doesn't need you to be impressive. It needs you to be human. Drop the act, let people in, let yourself feel. Because pretending to be invincible only guarantees one thing, that no one will know when you're actually hurting. Number 6, I need you to stop making me prove I'm real. That's what your pain would say if it could finally speak. Not with anger, but with fatigue, because it's tired of being doubted, even by you. See, when no one else validates what you feel, it's easy to start questioning yourself. Was it really that bad? Maybe I'm just being dramatic. Other people have it worse, right? That inner dialogue is not reflection. It's self-gaslighting. And it's one of the most common and most destructive forms of emotional denial. Your pain doesn't need a debate. It doesn't need to win an argument. It just needs to be acknowledged, and not by a therapist or a friend or a social media quote, but by you. This is where Dr. Kristin Neff's concept of self-compassion becomes essential. She teaches that healing begins not with validation from others, but with a willingness to say to yourself, yes, this hurts, yes, this matters, and no, I don't need permission to feel it. The truth is, your pain doesn't require evidence. It's not on trial. It happened, you felt it, you're still carrying it. That's enough. Constantly trying to explain, justify, or downplay it is just another way of abandoning yourself. Imagine telling a crying child, "Are you sure it hurts?" Sounds cruel, doesn't it? But that's exactly what you do to yourself every time you demand proof before accepting your own suffering. Pain needs a witness, not a jury. And the most important witness is always you. So stop making your healing dependent on who believes you. Start making it dependent on whether you believe you. That's when everything begins to change, because real healing doesn't need applause. It only needs truth, presence, and your permission to be real. Number 7. I need to scream, not whisper. That's what your pain would say if it could break past the polite silence you forced it into. You see, we live in a world that teaches us to keep it together, to be composed, to whisper our wounds and smile while bleeding. But pain that's forced to whisper eventually roars in other ways. And not in healthy ways either. It leaks out as passive aggression. It explodes as rage. It festers into depression. It hardens into resentment. It sabotages relationships, dreams, even your sense of self. Unspoken pain doesn't disappear. It just finds another door. In psychology, this is often linked to emotional suppression, a state where feelings are pushed down until they manifest through the body or behavior. As Dr. Gabor Mate explains, when you shut down emotion, you're also shutting down part of your humanity. That part doesn't go away. It gets redirected into addiction, perfectionism, overthinking, or sudden emotional outbursts that seem to come out of nowhere. You don't need to scream at people, but your pain needs a voice. You can write it, cry it, speak it in a safe space, break down in the privacy of your own room, but let it out. Give it form. Because the longer it stays silent, the more likely it becomes a part of how you move through life without you even realizing it. Eventually, pain that never got expressed becomes your personality. You stop trusting. You stop hoping. You call it realism. But really, it's a scar talking. So give your pain the dignity of a voice. Not just a whisper through clenched teeth, but a scream if needed. Not for attention, but for release. Because when you let your pain speak honestly, it doesn't have to fight its way out of you later. And that's when healing begins. Not when you whisper, "I'm fine," but when you finally say, "I'm not," and that's okay. Number 8. I need you to stop healing on other people's timelines. That's what your pain would say if it could speak for itself instead of being edited for comfort. Too often, people rush their healing because the world around them gets uncomfortable. Friends stop checking in. Family says, "You should be over it by now." Social media pushes motivational slogans like, let it go, or everything happens for a reason. And without realizing it, you start performing healing instead of actually healing. But your pain is not a performance, it's a process. And here's the truth, healing is not linear. It doesn't follow a schedule, there are no deadlines. You might be fine for weeks, then suddenly feel shattered again. That doesn't mean you're weak or stuck. It means you're human. Psychologist Dr. Pauline Boss introduced the idea of ambiguous loss, a type of grief that doesn't have a clear ending. It lingers. It flares up at unexpected moments. And for many of us, that's exactly how emotional pain behaves. It comes in waves, not checklists. Your pain doesn't care if people are tired of hearing about it. It's not asking for their permission. It's asking for yours. Permission to exist. Permission to be messy. Permission to take the time it actually needs, not the time society says is appropriate. So stop comparing your healing to someone else's highlight reel. Stop trying to shrink your grief so it makes others more comfortable. Because healing that is rushed becomes pain that returns later, louder, sharper, more stubborn. Give your pain room to breathe, let it take up space. And when someone says, "You should be over it by now," remember, that's their discomfort talking, not your timeline. Your healing is not late, it's right on time, as long as it's on your terms. Number 9. I need you to stop intellectualizing me. That's what your pain would say if it could cut through your clever explanations and sit you down face to face. You've done the research. You know the terms: attachment wounds, emotional neglect, abandonment trauma. You can quote the experts. You've even started sounding like a therapist. But here's the hard truth. Understanding your pain is not the same as feeling it. Intellectualizing is the mind's way of staying in control. It says, if I can name it, I can manage it. But emotions don't heal through management. They heal through embodiment, through being fully felt. The moment you use logic to avoid emotion, you've turned pain into a mental puzzle rather than a human experience. This is a classic defense mechanism. Freud wrote about it. So did modern psychologists like Dan Siegel. They've all warned that when we go up into our heads, it's often because we're afraid of going down into our hearts. It's safer to analyze the storm than to stand in the rain. But healing doesn't happen in the intellect. It happens in the body, in the chest tightness you ignore, in the lump in your throat when you try to speak about something that still haunts you, in the tears that never got permission to fall. You've become so good at explaining why you hurt, you've forgotten how to just hurt. Your pain doesn't need another theory. It doesn't need a chart, a checklist, or a self-diagnosis. It needs a moment of stillness, a room with no filters, a breath where you stop trying to solve it and just feel it. You don't need to be smarter to heal. You need to be softer, braver, present. Because when you finally stop talking about your pain and start sitting with it, that's when it loosens its grip. That's when it begins to leave. Number 10. I need you to stop trying to be inspirational. That's what your pain would whisper if it could cut through the pressure you've put on it to be productive. Somewhere along the way you were taught that if you suffer, you better turn it into something powerful. A story, a lesson, a comeback narrative that others can clap for. And so, instead of just grieving, you start scripting. Instead of breaking down, you start performing. Because pain that doesn't end with a triumphant message feels like failure. But here's the truth. Not all pain is meant to inspire. Some pain just wants to be held, quietly, privately. Without hashtags, without takeaways, without being flipped into a TED Talk. You don't owe your healing to an audience. Psychologist Dr. Brené Brown talks about vulnerability without boundaries, when we rush to share pain before it's been processed. Not because we're ready, but because we feel obligated to make it meaningful fast. But that pressure bypasses something sacred, the actual feeling part. Your pain is not raw material for someone else's inspiration. It's not your job to turn every wound into a wisdom quote. Some wounds are too deep for that. Some never become lessons. They just become part of your story. And that's okay. There is something holy in simply sitting with pain, without translating it for others. When you let pain exist for its own sake, not for applause, you finally give it space to breathe, and you give yourself permission to be a person, not a project. So stop trying to be remarkable. Stop trying to sound strong while you're bleeding. You don't need to be impressive to be valid, you just need to be real, and sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can possibly be. Number 11. I need you to tell the truth. That's what your pain would say if it could finally cut through your rehearsed stories, polite silences, and carefully edited memories. You've rewritten what happened so many times to make it sound less damaging, to protect the people who hurt you, to keep the peace. But what you're really doing is carrying a weight that doesn't belong to you, because every lie you tell to protect someone else becomes another brick on your own chest. You've downplayed your hurt, softened your language, told yourself they didn't mean it, or it wasn't that bad. But pain isn't concerned with how nice someone seemed or how many good intentions they had. It remembers how it felt. And when you deny the truth of what happened, you deny the part of you that lived through it. Psychologist Dr. Janina Fisher explains that when trauma survivors protect their abusers emotionally, they betray themselves unconsciously. And that betrayal shows up as anxiety, emotional numbness, a deep sense of being unseen, even by yourself. Your pain is asking you to stop editing the past just to make it easier to swallow. It's asking you to say, yes, they hurt me. Yes, I felt abandoned. Yes, I'm lonelier than I admit. That's not victimhood, that's honesty. And honesty is the first step to healing anything real. The truth isn't always pretty, but pain doesn't heal in false light. It needs raw, sharp, unfiltered daylight to begin loosening its grip. Tell the truth, not the version that makes others comfortable, the version that sets you free. Because healing doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from finally choosing yourself, especially when no one else ever did. In final words, what you refuse to feel doesn't disappear. It just waits for a quieter moment to return louder. If your pain could speak, it wouldn't ask for pity. It wouldn't need applause. It would ask for your honesty, your presence, and your willingness to stop running. Not from the world, but from yourself. The truth is, pain is not interested in performance. It is not moved by how many books you read or how positive you try to sound. Pain wants your full attention. It wants you to stop negotiating your emotions for the comfort of others. To stop pretending it did not hurt when it did. It wants your truth, even if that truth is messy, ugly, or unfinished. Pain doesn't come to ruin you. It comes to reveal something, a truth about what mattered, a wound that never closed, a part of you that still needs care. And if you would just stop editing your experience long enough to sit with it, you'd hear it. You'd hear what that silence has been trying to say for years. Healing doesn't begin when you move on. It begins when you stop avoiding what is already inside you. When you stop making your pain prove it is real. When you finally stop calling your grief negativity and your anger weakness. Your pain is not proof that you failed. It is proof that you felt. And to feel deeply is not a flaw. It is a sign you were fully alive in the moment something changed you. So ask yourself gently, what has my pain been trying to tell me that I have not been brave enough to hear? Then listen, not to fix, not to rush, just to honor it. That's the beginning of something real. And that's the beginning of you. Thank you for watching and see you in another episode.